Hey everyone, I'm here again with another story time. So, I have been collecting stories to tell you guys, and this one is from my brother in law. If you got any creepy stories that you don't feel like telling yourself and want me to tell it, I got you. Just put it in my inbox. So, this story, this one's a little funny. So the story goes, my brother-in-law's dad was out one night and he was with a friend. So him and the friend are walking home, and as they're walking, the friend keeps telling him to walk in front of him. Because my brother-in-law's dad wasn't no dummy, he refused to walk in front of him. The guy kept telling him, walk in front of me, walk in front of me. So he keeps telling him, why? Why do you want me to walk in front of you? I'm older than you. You're younger than me. You should walk in front of me. So they go back and forth like this the entire way home. And as they're going back and forth, my brother-in-law's dad makes sure that he is never walking in front of the guy. It's either right next to him or the guy is walking in front of him. Eventually, they arrive at the guy's house and they part ways. A couple weeks later, my brother-in-law's dad is with a mutual friend of him and the guy. From this point on, we're going to call the guy Jim, and we'll call my brother-in-law's dad Chris, and the mutual friend, we'll call him John. So John and Chris are hanging out, and John starts telling Chris a story. So John says a couple weeks ago he was out with Jim. John says as him and Jim made their way home, he started realizing that Jim was slowly starting to trail behind him. As he's realizing this and starts to turn around, he caught Jim trying to do voodoo on him. Once John realized what Jim was trying to do, he lunged at him. As Jim realized that John was lunging at him to give him a nice beating, Jim turned himself into a donkey. So right in front of John, Jim turns into a donkey and he goes to run. As Jim the donkey goes to run away, John grabs him by his donkey tail. John says he grabbed that Jim donkey and put a beating on him. Whoop that donkey down. After a minute or two of John beating Jim, Jim finally escapes. So John sees Jim ride off as a donkey. John says the next day he went to Jim's house to confront him. He said when he got there, Jim was black and blue. So John confronts Jim and asks him, why would you try to do voodoo on me? Jim proceeds to tell him that he wasn't going to do anything serious to him. He was just tired. He tells John that because he was so tired and his legs were hurting from the long walk, Jim's plan was to turn John into a donkey and then he would ride John home. He said once he was finished using John to get home, he would have let John go home and John would have woke up the next day as his normal self. After hearing this story, Chris realized he wasn't paranoid. That day, when him and Jim were walking home and Jim kept telling him to walk in front of him, he had plans on turning Chris into a donkey to ride Chris home. But Chris had been too smart to fall for John's plan. I've never heard of stuff like this, but apparently this is a thing in Haiti. People turning other people into donkeys to ride them home. Wild.